Okay, somehow my phone just tried to make an emergency call at the end of my last video, so this will be short to finish this part up. So I would say the end or the resolution is how he named it Wagon Train after a tornado. But then also at the very end it says, Sarah gives a reluctant smile. That means she doesn't really want to smile, but she's going to. It says like she's supposed to, because she knows that even though she's heard that story 100 times, her dad is just trying to make her feel better. So after tornado, and then I'm going to put Sarah smiles. That's kind of the conclusion, the end of it, because the whole point of the story is that Sarah had a bad day. Her dad shares his bad day when he made the diorama, and then she smiles because she realizes everyone has a bad day now and then. So with our chart, we have identified the conflict. So in your own story, you need to come up with a conflict. What's the problem? What are you trying to figure out in this story? Let's talk about the sequence. We did talk about the sequence, so what happened at the beginning, the middle, and the end. We'll talk about that a little bit more, so I'm going to write beginning, middle, and the end. The pacing. So the pacing is nice because you don't spend too much time. You know, Sarah's having a bad day. Her dad wants to make it better. He goes into this story, and then she smiles at the end. So the pacing is kind of how long you get to the good part of your story. If you've ever been reading a book and you just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in chapter 4 and nothing's happening yet, that means the pacing is a little bit slow. You're wanting something exciting or something interesting to happen, and it's just not happening yet. So for your nonfiction narrative, you kind of want to get the reader interested and get into your story right away, so you keep up with that pace. All right? And we talked about the conclusion. So for sequencing, it said to use transitional words. So you can know sort of the sequence of the story as you're reading it. Okay, so I'm going to give you a chart of transitional words that work for the beginning, the middle, and the end of your story. So look for a little chart like this. I'm going to share it with you. Now, the words I share in this chart aren't the only ones that you could use. They're just some examples of ways to transition. So in the beginning, you could say one time, or it all started. In the middle, you could say the following day, or later, or then. And then at the end, you could say in the end, last, finally, after all, things like that. So these are just going to give you ideas of those transitional words. So let's see if we can find any transitional words in our story. Oh, here's one, continue. So it tells me that he's going to continue the story. Let's see. You might be finding ones that I'm not seeing, but that's okay. Okay, then he says then. That's a clue that tells us he's continuing. Then, and this is probably some humor on the author's part. She says, and then, because he's kind of been repeating that word, even though she knows what comes next. So is another transitional word. So there's a few words in there. All right, we did dialogue. Let's talk about description. Now, part of this story, you might have read the word.
Okay, I finished the test.
Okay, that's good. You can log out now. Thanks, Sophia. Oh.
You are now unmuted.
Thanks, Sophia. You can log out.
Okay.
Okay.
You are now muted.
Okay, what was I saying? Oh, we're talking about description. All right, so you might not have known what a diorama is, so hopefully you looked that up or you asked your parents, so I can share a picture of that with you. A lot of teachers used to do this. They used to give you a project and you had to use a shoebox and make like a scene inside the shoebox. So you make trees or little people and then maybe a house over here. So a little scene inside the shoebox, and then you bring it to school and you present it. So in this case, it's about traveling across the Great Plains. Okay, and it does say wagon train, so I can imagine a train of wagons kind of going along, maybe like the Oregon Trail. Okay. Hey, Austin, do you need...
You are now unmuted.
Do you need something, Austin?
You are now muted.
Okay.
Do we do a research for the math assignment?
Oh, for the caffeine part?
You're muted.
You are now unmuted.